fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And we are still in Theatre Month.
Theatre!
Here at Fully Booked. And this week, we are talking about basically books and stage adaptations. I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but a lot of plays that exist were originally novels, even though I think a lot of the time, like, the play becomes more famous.
Yeah.
Than the original book is, especially if it's like turned into a movie. They're always like based on the play, and you're like, but what about the source material?
Book, though? Yeah.
You know, it's like the way that it's like in the way that like everybody's like, oh, The Witcher's based on the video game, and I'm like, it's also based on all of those books that came before.
There was a whole series of books before there was a video game.
Exactly, those all existed beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So that's what we're talking about today, and we're kind of going to get into, I guess, the strengths and weaknesses of taking source material that's like a novel, an actual novel, and not just writing an original stage production, and kind of change, like, you know, morphing it into a stage production. What does that do to the story? What does it do to the characters? What's good? What's bad? You know, how does that kind of have an impact on like what you would have taken away from the original story itself?
Cool.
Sorry if everybody can hear the rain in the background, but it's like coming down.
It's pishing it down.
Quite seriously right now. So anyway, we're just going to work through it and just pretend, if you can hear it, just pretend it's ambient noise.
It is. It's cozy.
It's cozy. We did it on purpose. You're welcome. Before we get started, Shireen, what's on your nightstand right now?
Well, Megan, you know how much I love Colleen Hoover.
Oh, God.
And
now I'm getting annoyed. And I've never read one of her fucking books before.
So I found, anybody who consistently listens to our podcast knows that I've given Coho a good try with like 3 books now.
I don't think she deserves a nickname.
And I found one of her books, All Your Perfects, in a discount bin. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, whatever, I'll get it. So I think I paid like $3 for this thing. So that's next lined up because...
P.S. Have all you guys heard that they've officially halted production of It Ends With Us, like, completely, possibly for the foreseeable future or permanently? It's really hard to say.
I was really surprised at the... backlash about that movie. Like,
yeah.
Like, I would have thought that given, like, the following that her books have, and especially It Ends With Us, which I have read, which
is one of her most famous ones, isn't it?
First one that I read by her. I did not like it. Yeah, I was really surprised at the backlash that this movie got. And I know it was around casting. And, like, you know,
is there a reason for that? I would really like someone to tell me because, like, I haven't read this book. I'm not going to, so...
I think it's because Blake Lively is a little bit older than the main character should be in the book. But it's also, I think, just kind of the look and feel. There was a picture of Blake Lively on set that went out that had a lot of backlash because she wasn't, like... she was dressed very, like, bohemian and, like, very, like, kind of... not very put together, I suppose.
Okay.
And it's just not very, not very similar to the character. And I think that the male character who they hired, or who they cast, the one who is in Jane the Virgin.
Yeah. I think he's also directing this movie, Justin Baldoni or something. I believe I saw that.
Very possible. But I think that there was a lot of backlash about him as well as the choice. So, anyway... All I have to say is I'm just surprised at the amount of, like, you know, talk that there's been around and the hate that there was around, you know, making this into a movie because I'm like, it's got such a big following. Like, I would have thought that they'd be really happy to see it adapted.
Yeah, it's weird. I am surprised about that, too, because it just seemed like it was something that was, like, so fucking popular.
And that was going to be the first Colleen Hoover
adaptation. I don't think there has been one.
No, there hasn't. And so, like, what goes through my mind then is, like, now everybody's going to be like, oh, hey, like, I'm not touching any of those with a 10-foot pole, you know?
Maybe not. That's it. If it's going through so many different issues, like, if it's already experiencing that. And apparently, like, you know, that's it now, I think, because of the WAG strike that's happening. And maybe because some of the backlash as well, that I have no idea what the specifics are. They've halted production, and apparently they're halfway through filming. Which I
They
was
were
like,
halfway
wow.
through
Yeah.
filming. They only
Yeah.
started not that long ago. Like Blake Lively just had a baby.
I know, she must be exhausted. I don't know why she's doing this.
Anyway.
Anyway, I don't know. I haven't figured out the whole Colleen Hoover hype, the toxic romance hype, but like this feels like it's in a really like extreme kind of way. Like not like in a cartoonish way, like in After where I can laugh about it. To an extent, because it's so, like, you watch those films and they're so fucking ridiculous and over the top. This feels like something that's, like, much more serious subject matter.
It is.
And
it caught me off guard.
Yeah, and I just don't know why we would want to glorify something like that and make a whole movie out of it. Now, I'm sure people will disagree with me about that. There might be people who listen at some point to this who really like Colleen Hoover. Cool.
Well, I
you're
think,
entitled to your opinion.
Yeah, like, I'm pretty sure that the angle is like, oh, but, the character decides to walk away from her toxic relationship, but it's just hard to read,
Yeah.
Like, it's a... I don't know. It's a tough one for me, and and I found that with a couple of her books that are just hard to read. But anyway, All Your Perfects is next on the list.
Oh God, I love that you just do this to yourself.
I do.
There's like an element of masochism in your brain when it comes to reading that I just haven't quite figured out yet. Shane.
I don't know either.
I only do it with movies because I can just fucking walk away from them after a while. It doesn't take me several days to do.
I'm just like morbidly curious about like all the hype. Like I'm like, I love romance. Like I love romance.
Sure.
And, like these are all romance, and I'm like, okay, well I'm gonna keep trying because there's got to be something in here. Like Verity wasn't bad, but that's the only one that was okay, and it was more of a thriller.
Yeah, maybe that would make something like this better. I don't know.
Anywho. What about you, Megan? What's on your nightstand?
Well, I kind of am like between things right now, but my next read is Jesus, A Court of Mist and Fury.
Thank you. I keep texting her. She keeps not answering
I had a
me.
few other books to get through, and the first was, I completely forgot to answer you the last time you sent me that. I had a few other things that were just kind of like I was working my way through to an extent to, just kind of like get a couple of them done because I had started a couple of things at the same time, but now I'm like there and I'm like, okay, this one's next on my list. I'll see what I can do. It's a big old high fantasy in the middle of the summer, which is like not my jam. So we'll see how things go.
But it's so good.
We'll see how things go. I'll see how it ends up working. I don't know yet. I'll see how I feel about it. It might take me a while to get through it. It's fucking long, so.
But it's so good. Chapter 55, everybody. You know what I'm talking about. Okay.
I don't. Anyway. Let's get started. Let's get into it. Let's talk about books that people make into plays.
Let's talk about books, baby. Let's talk about you and me.
Okay. So, we were doing like a little bit of reading, I think, to like get a good understanding of kind of like how many books have been adapted into stage plays. A fucking lot is the answer. And you
many
don't
that you wouldn't expect.
No, and I think some of them have been done like more on Broadway. Some of them have been much like lower budget productions or done in different areas instead. A lot, guys. Like a lot of them have been adapted or made into stage plays. I mean, if you're thinking of famous ones right off the bat, you normally get into the Broadway sphere. So it's like Hamilton,
Wicked,
what's it called? Les Mis, like all of those ones.
Phantom of the
Opera. A lot of those ones are, like some of like the big ones. I started reading through this and I was like, this is so funny. I was reading through an article to look at like some different adaptations. You got stuff like The Color Purple, which that I buy as like a stage play. That makes sense. I had completely forgotten that they had made a stage production of Carrie. It's a musical.
It's a musical?
Yeah, it was very short-lived, but that was the thing. They did the same thing with American Psycho. Wild.
Interesting. I bet it was good, though.
I was probably interesting to see. I feel like with American Psycho, though, it would turn up the comedy almost too much, and, like, I wouldn't know how to feel about it, because I'm like, no, we still need the really dark aspects to be in that story for it to vibe. I don't know. We've got things like The Wizard of Oz, another one that's definitely been done before. Let's see, Christmas Carol, which, Jesus, like how many times have we seen stage productions of a Christmas Carol? Guys?
Plus movie adaptations.
The Nutcracker, they've done, I don't know, probably. There's probably like 12 different ones. Yeah. Personally, I like the Muppet version, but whatever.
That is the best one.
It's a good one. And a ton of fairy tales as well. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, even things like, I'm sure you can find stage productions of things like Little Red Riding Hood. And
there's certainly pantomimes of all those.
Pantomimes of all of those. And also, like, you've got the stage productions, like actual plays that are created, and ballets.
Oh, yeah.
Ballets
definitely.
love to do an old fairy
Cinderella
tale.
here.
I used to do ballet when I was a kid. We did Sleeping Beauty. Which was like a big one, which at first my 7-year-old brain was still catching up with like what the French name for Sleeping Beauty is, and I didn't quite understand what we were doing at first, and then I finally realized it, and I was like, La Belle au Bois dormant.
But it doesn't make sense, because the French translation is the beauty in the sleeping wood.
And I'm like, is she in the woods? I thought that she pricked her finger on the spindle in a castle.
Well, Sleeping Beauty versus the beauty in the sleeping forest is very different.
Yes. Yeah, and it's also because the woods are sleeping and she's not sleeping, according to the French version, which is very...
So what are we even doing?
It's very confusing. Yeah. You've got things like, what's it called? Long Day's Journey into Night is another one.
Crime and Punishment.
Oh, God, I would hate to see that on stage. Yuck. Dr. Zhivago, which also must be so long.
The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night.
I didn't know that they'd made that into a stage play.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
There's been a lot of, over the years, people have asked for that to be made into a movie.
Did they not make it into a movie?
No.
Why did I think that they had?
Or are they about to make it into a movie? I don't know.
Maybe? Wow, that's weird. I thought they had. That's really strange. You've got things like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, because there have definitely been like adaptations of those kinds of things.
They made his Dark Materials into a play.
That must have been so hard to do.
The
polar bears, Shireen.
But it's hard enough in the show and the movie.
Yeah.
For me, that is a book, pure and simple.
It's a book or a film.
Not even a film. They did such a poor job.
Well, the film is terrible, but maybe I haven't watched his Dark Materials, the TV show, but I hear it's decent. So
it's decent, but I think that the concepts of it, because in the book they tell you a lot about the relationship and the bond between the demons and the humans, and you get immersed in the story from people's perspectives. It's necessary to understand those
So that's
books.
a good jumping off point for, sort of opinions on the matter is with something as involved as far as a fantasy story like his Dark Materials, that whole world, you just don't have time, do you, to really get into the nitty-gritty of it all the way that you will in a novel.
Well, because you're doing all this world building behind it, right?
Yeah, where you can't have somebody who stands as your narrator and explains every fucking aspect of the world on stage and just walks you through all of it. Yes, I understand, okay, we used to have Greek tragedies and your chorus would do something essentially like that, but it was 2 paragraphs, guys. They wouldn't be talking for 20 minutes. They'd be talking a little bit, and then we'd start another scene, and then they'd jump back in.
And then Perseus
enters the room and whatever. Yeah, that's it exactly, and when you get other classical plays, yes, they'll have people who will speak to the audience and who will do some exposition for you, but it's only a few minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Because they know that an audience isn't going to want to stare at one person standing there explaining the whole story to you for 20, 25 minutes of stage time with everybody else just waiting to start.
Well, I think it's also if you take things like Wicked, for example, I've seen the Broadway play where, first of all, the songs are A+ in that, but in the book you wouldn't have the songs, right?
No, of course.
And then, so that would mean that there would need to be a lot more world building, a lot more character building.
And I mean, if you think of if I think of Wicked, my takeaways from reading the book versus seeing the play, the book's much darker. There are much more darker themes to it, and it's overall sadder.
And I think there's a lot of politics in the book.
There are, yeah. There's a ton of back and forth from what I remember anyway. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. So I think that it can make I think they have no choice. I think that if you're going to adapt something from a novel and make it a play, you have to add an amount of extra whimsy to it.
Well, I mean, it would completely potentially change the story, right?
Yeah.
So Wicked is an example. I don't know what Crime and Punishment would be. Imagine if it was a musical. That would be hilarious.
Oh, my God. I would probably go see that just to go see it.
I feel that would be a Simpsons episode.
Oh, my God. That would be
Crime
great.
and Punishment,
and it was a musical. That would be great. That would be so funny.
They did it with Hamilton. They turned Hamilton into a musical.
That is true. And it was really just based on a biography about Alexander Hamilton.
Right.
So...
which was apparently very well done from what I understand.
Hamilton?
Yeah.
I can't believe you haven't watched it yet.
No, I haven't watched it.
It's weird, Shereen.
I know, everybody's like, you would love it.
It's really good. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things, like, I don't think I'm, like, obsessed with it, but it's definitely worth seeing.
I know, and I was about to go see it when I was in Toronto last time, like, because it's playing there.
Okay.
But nobody wanted to go with me. They'd
Aww.
already been to see it. I'm like, I hate you all.
Fine, be that
Come with me
way.
to see Hamilton.
Yeah, and apparently, like, I don't know. I feel like it can, like, those kinds of things. Something like Hamilton works incredibly well. First of all, because you've turned the entire thing into a rap, basically. That's what everybody knows Lin-Manuel Miranda for at this point. It's just like if there's like a Disney movie that comes out now and there's a rap in it, you're like, well, he wrote that, obviously.
I mean, he writes some banging tunes.
Yeah,
let's be
so, I think that we kind of expect that now
Yeah.
from that type of theater, but it was very, it was a really big deal when it originally came out because, like, no one had really been doing that with the shows yet. So this was, what, like 2016 or something when they originally did it?
Yeah.
And no one had really done that yet. So this was like a whole new experience at the theater for people, which is fun because it totally changes up your expectations about something. Like, if you're going to see Hamilton, you think it's going to be like a boring,
Yeah.
sort of biographical look at Alexander
History
Hamilton's
lesson.
life. Yeah, that's it in American history, basically. But you got, like, something that was actually very interactive in the way that, like, they told people what was going on, which I think made probably a big difference for audiences. And, most people won't have read that biography, but they would have gone to see the play.
And I think, like, the point there is that when you're adapting a book to a play, and I think this is what we're trying to get at, is that you have to find a very creative way of telling the story to keep your audience captivated, right? Because, like, a book is a book. Like, it's all, like, telling. It gives you all the corners and all the information, the inside of your characters' minds, all the fantasy world building, all the information, whether it's factual. Like, so when you're converting that into a play, it's got to be very challenging in some
It must
cases.
be so incredibly difficult for the
'Cause
playwright.
you have to be very creative in how you're going to do this and think outside the box in a lot of ways.
Very, very difficult to do. And this is also where you wind up with people like dramaturgs who will like come in and fiddle with the script sometimes when like things aren't working very well, who are like specifically hired for that reason. I don't know how common they are now, but it used to be like a big thing to like bring a dramaturg in if things aren't going well.
Well, you gotta really take your hat off to these people, right? Because, like, things like Hamilton, Wicked, like, where the story has had to really change or be adapted in a creative way, it doesn't seem like there's been any, like, uproar or backlash for it, Like,
No.
it's just its own
It's
thing.
almost like they're two separate
Yeah,
entities that come from
exactly.
the same idea, kind
Yeah.
of, but like we kind of veered off in two different directions with the book versus with the play, which is
sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that I think anyway, like, I don't know, but from what I'm seeing right now, we're going to get something really different with the film as well.
For Wicked?
Yeah. And I'm only basing that on the fact that, like, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande do not look like high school students. So it's really weird to me that they are the people who are cast, not because of their talent level. They're both really great. So I don't think that part of it doesn't weird me out. It's their age that weirds me out a little bit, where I'm like, are they still going, like, are they changing the story? Are they still going to be at, like, a boarding school?
Are we supposed to just suspend our disbelief?
Are we supposed to suspend it, like, to that extent?
Yeah.
Because you can, again, that's something that you can do better with theater. If you think of,
I
like,
mean,
the original cast of Wicked, right? Like Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. Yes, obviously they were quite a bit older, but it's because performing vocals and doing all that kind of stuff live isn't necessarily something that someone could achieve at 17. It would be really difficult to do. That's not something that you see on a regular basis.
I agree, because the vocals are amazing.
But in a film, I don't know how that's going to translate.
I don't know. I'm very curious to see what
Yeah.
that looks like. And, this isn't the only one that they've done this to. There's been multiple, like, movie adaptations as well.
What's the one that everybody hated because it was the same guy from Broadway who did it in a movie? Dear Evan Hansen. Okay, so it's a really famous Broadway show that Ben Platt had originally done. If anybody doesn't know, he was in, like, some of the Pitch Perfect movies, and there was the series on Netflix he was in, which was what, like, The Politician's Son or something like that. I don't remember. Anyway, He's great. He's really good. But they decided, like, years after he'd done it on stage, they were going to make a film version of Dear Evan Hansen, and they had him play a high schooler in it, and people hated it because it doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, once again, if I'm watching a theater production and I'm quite far away from the stage,
I don't care.
I can't really see their face all that well,
No.
but like when I'm watching a movie and we are zoomed right in on my face, think of Never Have I Ever. How mad was I when that first came out, and what's his face was like obviously 35.
Yes, Paxton's character.
Yeah.
Shireen was so annoyed. She was like, how old is this guy? This doesn't make any sense. And we were watching it together, and I was like, yeah, that's not like a 17-year-old's jawline. Like, that's not what a guy looks like when he's 17 years old.
He was tired.
Yeah, well, he's like in his 30s, so it's understandable. He's much closer to our age than he is to the age of the character that he's supposed to be playing.
Totally.
So it doesn't really make any sense. So yeah, it's just much more like, I know it's done in film and television all the time. Like, they will, they'll like take someone and age them down, quote unquote, where they're like, oh, I'm 25, but I'm playing 20 or I'm playing 18 or whatever it is. And you can get away with things to a certain extent, because most people aren't like, yes, you look 25 and you are 25. That's not necessarily the case for a lot of people. But you can theater allows you to do just so much more that way. So if I'm taking my book and I'm like, okay, these are students in high school, and now I'm making a play out of that, I can cast someone who's 30 to play that 17-year-old kid. Of course,
and it's just not a big deal. Right up in your face.
No, that's it. And it's just not a big deal. Totally. They can dress me a certain way and stuff, and as long as I really don't look like I'm even older than I am, for instance, you can get away with it. You can fudge a lot more things in theater that way, but on film, I'm like, oh boy, I don't know how that would work.
No, not so good.
No. And it's just, that's what it is. It's just that, in the same way that it's difficult to put together a really good, really like interesting theater production of source material or a novel that requires too much world building.
Yeah.
I think it's just too difficult. I don't know how you would be able to do that and actually make it like an enjoyable production. I think you need to just be able to take a singular book, not a series, almost a singular book, and kind of like adapt something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. It can work sometimes. Like, look, like you said, Cursed Child, they had...
Yeah, they whittled
technically
that down.
They whittled that down into one production, because I was like, wow,
It did feel very rushed, though. I will say that.
Okay.
Like, I didn't see the original, which I was supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
But it did feel very rushed, where it was like year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and I'm like, whoa.
Like, we are just speeding through
going
this.
through it. Like, okay,
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I can get that. Yeah, that's it. Exactly. That's a really good example. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It is hard to do that, which is probably why they gave much more detail to the original production that they did, and they split it into 2 parts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You don't see that too often, but what am I thinking of? Angels in America is a 2-parter. So if
Wasn't that a movie?
It's a miniseries also, but it was a play.
I thought they made a movie out of that.
They made that.
Oh, I'm thinking of Angels in the Outfield.
Oh my god. Just slightly different subject material, Shireen.
Woo!
Oh boy. Angels in the Outfield is about angels playing baseball. Angels in America is about the AIDS epidemic in the 80s.
Really not the
Slightly
same thing.
different.
I am so sorry.
I'm not. This makes for good content. So I think that at the end of the day, that is kind of what it is. If you take a book that's like not too long, where a lot of it has to do with the characters and their interactions with each other, you can make a really great stage adaptation out of that, because it gives you so much more of like the emotion to an extent, because it's actors who are actually performing those scenes. But if you take something a la like His Dark Material, or
it's too much.
Yeah.
Like, it's too big of an endeavor. And like His Dark Materials is what, 3 books?
It's 3 books.
Why do I have it twice?
I don't know. You've got 2 versions of it.
I know.
Interesting. I really am looking at all of your YA stuff sitting on the shelf now, and I really want somebody to make Twilight a play. Can we do that?
I would be there. Wherever in the world they would do that,
We
I
would
would
just
be there.
fly there.
Oh my god.
Wouldn't that be great? I want someone to call someone Spider Monkey and then climb up a tree.
Okay, Twilight shit posting group, the Ratties, we need you to get on this, please.
Someone mount a production, please. Get a playwright in there.
You better hold on tight, Spider Monkey.
Write some songs. Someone can sing
This
Supermassive
is
Black
the
Hole while
skin
they're
of a
playing
killer.
baseball. Oh, we've gone off the rails now.
I think we need to stop this before
Probably.
it goes even worse.
Yeah. I think that's my takeaway from it. I think that's all I have to really say about it. I'm pretty sure that is what you need to do. Take something that's actually feasibly can be put on stage where like I don't have to suspend my disbelief to an extent that it like gives me a headache at the end of it. And that's it.
Ta-da!
I don't know. Actually, you know what? What do you guys think of this? I'd be really curious if some of the stuff, like, if anybody had seen some of the productions of, like, Carrie or, like, American Psycho or, like there's, like, musicals of everything. It's ridiculous.
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls has one.
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice had one.
Green
Legally
Day.
Blonde had one.
American Idiot had one. Shrek had one.
Oh, fuck, that's right. God, so many. Anyway, I'd be really curious to know if some people have actually seen any of these. But you can let us know about that over on Instagram at fullybookedca. You can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. And if you are still here with us, which I hope you are after all that, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening because it really helps us to get the show out in front of more people. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.